The President, please be seated. Good morning. In the name of the President of the Trial Chamber, I would like to warmly welcome co-prosecutors, counsels for the accused persons, lead co-lawyers and lawyers for the civil parties, and the parties to the proceedings. Today's hearing is scheduled to hear the experts, Professor John Campbell, who has examined the accused person and who has submitted the medical reports on the medical status of Mr. Ieng Sary. Mr. Ieng Sary had been admitted to the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital from the 7th of September until yesterday, the 7th of November 2012. It is hoped that today's hearing will be the opportunity for the chamber, the judges of the bench, and the parties concerned to examine these reports. I would like to declare the hearing open. Before I proceed to present the presentation of the medical reports and questions will be put to the experts, the Chamber wishes to also remind the parties to the proceeding that the Chamber has noted that Mr. Ieng Sary has some health concerns, and he kept asking the Chamber to allow him to observe the proceedings from his holding cell almost during the entire time during the proceedings. In light of that, on the 24th of August 2012, the trial chamber made a request to Mr. John Campbell and Dr. Sina Fazel and Dr. Hoot Lina, who were present in Cambodia at that time when they were examining the fitness to stand trial of Mrs. Ieng Thirit, to preliminarily examined medical condition of Mr. Ieng Sary and submitted such a report to the trial chamber accordingly. Document E222. The three experts submitted their preliminary report to the trial chamber on the 3rd of September 2012. Document E222/1. In that first report, the three experts concluded that Mr. Ieng Sary was mentally and physically fit to plead and stand trial. On the 7th of September 2012, the accused person, Ieng Sary, was admitted to the emergency section of the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital, where he remained hospitalized until yesterday, the 7th of November 2012, when the trial chamber made a request to the Office of Administration to make an arrangement so that Mr. Ieng Sary could be returned to the detention facility of the ECCC, so that he could also participate in today's hearing when the chamber hears the experts' opinions on his medical status. The chamber also received medical reports from the experts while Mr. Ieng Sary remained hospitalized. To date, there has not been any confirmation as to the future development of Mr. Ieng Sary's medical conditions. It is not known when he will be well enough to participate in the trial proceedings. To that effect, after having listened to the treating doctors on the 21st of September 2012, and that on the 24th of September 2012, the trial chamber indicated to the parties that the chamber would submit all the relevant medical reports concerning Ieng Sary medical treatment at the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital to Professor Campbell, along with the transcript of the court proceedings of the 7th of September 2012, in which these doctors took the stand giving their testimonies before the chamber concerning the relevant medical issues of Mr. Ieng Sary. Upon having received and examined all the reports, the relevant medical reports, Professor Campbell indicated to the trial chamber that according to the medical related documents he received, he found it difficult to be persuaded as to the changes in Ieng Sary's diagnosis since the last time he examined the accused person. Therefore, on the 8th of October 2012, the trial chamber issued the reappointment order appointing Professor John Campbell to re-examine Mr. Ieng Sary. The next examination was done with the assistance of another Cambodian medical doctor, document E238. On the 23rd of October 2012, after having reviewed the brief biography submitted to the trial chamber by the Vesu unit, the trial chamber ordered the appointment of Cambodian doctor, Dr. Lau Wan Thari, to work with Professor Campbell, document E239, to examine Mr. Ieng Sary on the 4th of November 2012. The assignments to these two doctors include: first, A. Examine Ieng Sary and review all recent medical information and tests conducted on him since Professor Campbell last reported. B. Conduct or have conducted any additional testing that he considers appropriate to assist in reaching a diagnosis. C. Consult with any other qualified person, such as a radiologist, whose assistance might be helpful in interpreting or confirming his conclusions on test results or on the local availability of specific medical tests he considers essential for a diagnosis of Ieng Sary's current health status. D. Advise the trial chamber if any such medical tests are not available in Phnom Penh and or whether there is a sufficient medical or technological skill based in Phnom Penh to administer those tests adequately. E. Report to the trial chamber on where and under what conditions medical tests that he considers are essential for confirming a diagnosis of Ieng Sary's current health status might be carried out. F. Report to the trial chamber his expert opinion on the current state of Ieng Sary's health and on when he might reasonably be discharged from hospital-based care. G. Advise the trial chamber of any changes he would recommend in Ieng Sary's medical care. In response to the appointment order by the trial chamber, the prosecutors, the civil party lawyers, had submitted some additional questions concerning the health status of Mr. Ieng Sary so that the doctors could incorporate their questions in their examination. The counsels for Mr. Ieng Sary also voiced their concerns with regard to the lack of qualification of the doctor assigned to examine Mr. Ieng Sary. And counsel for Mr. Ieng Sary is also concerned with regard to the timing of the submission of the medical report, because the timing itself is not friendly enough for counsels to be able to have enough time to review the medical report, let alone prepare the questionings. On the 1st of November 2012, the vessel unit confirmed to the chamber that Mr. Lau Wantari was not able to take part in examining the health condition of Mr. Ieng Sary due to his very busy schedule at his workplace. Please look at document E239/1.1. Furthermore, the vessel unit also indicated to the trial chamber it was not able to locate another Cambodian doctor for such assignment. For that, the trial chamber consulted with the judges of the bench, and the chamber decided to preliminarily work with Professor Campbell, who has already been appointed on the medical condition of Mr. Ieng Sary, so that the chamber has the ground for our future deliberation. After having reviewed the medical reports and the recent report submitted by the hospital, and having contacted Mr. Ieng Sary on 2 occasions, once on the 4th of November and the second one on the 5th of November 2012. The expert also consulted with treating doctors to obtain some information concerning the health condition of Mr. Ieng Sary. These doctors include doctors Chia La Huân, Kam Som San, Chok Thida, Van Mach, and Ki Bu Suo. The reports have already been submitted in English to the trial chamber and placed in the case file on the 6th of November 2012, document 238/4. This report was also translated into Khmer and placed onto the case file on the 7th of November 2012. The expert concluded that Mr. Ieng Sary physical condition is weak, but he is able to concentrate when remain sitting in the courtroom during the court proceedings. And the expert also includes by saying that he would be well assisted if there is any change to the facilities in the holding cell, and also he needs better personal care as opposed to the current care he receives. The chamber has already informed to parties concerning the matters that are going to be discussed during today's session. Mrs. Saikolvati, you are now instructed to report to the chamber on the attendance status of the parties to the proceedings. Saikolvati, Mr. President and Your Honors, the parties to the proceedings today are all present, except Mr. Ieng Sary, who is present but in his holding cell due to his health concerns. The expert that has already been appointed by the trial chamber is ready and waiting in the waiting room. The expert has already taken an oath. The President, thank you. First, the chamber would like to rule on the request by Mr. Ieng Sary. The chamber received the medical report by Mr. Campbell E238/4 concerning the medical condition of Mr. Ieng Sary. And the chamber also received a medical report concerning Mr. Ieng Sary's health condition by the treating doctor, who indicated to the chamber that Mr. Ieng Sary is very fatigued. He feels dizzy, and he has some lower back pain, and his vision is not very good, and he cannot walk or climb the stairs. However, the doctor indicates also that Mr. Ieng Sary is mentally and physically fit to observe the proceedings from his holding cell. Doctor indicates that Ieng Sary in his holding cell can consult with his counsel from there. Therefore, the chamber allows Mr. Ieng Sary to observe the proceedings from his holding cell for the whole day. AV booth officers are now instructed to ensure that the AV equipments are well connected to Mr. Ieng Sary's holding cell so that he can observe the proceedings from there for the whole day. Before we proceed to the session where the testimony of the expert will be heard, the Chamber wishes to also inform the parties to the proceeding that the hearing today is conducted in public. The Chamber wishes to ask counsels for the Ieng Sary team whether they consent to the fact that the medical reports of Mr. Ieng Sary would be examined during the session. The Chamber has already obtained the documents, but the Chamber just wishes to make sure that this matter is well confirmed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom. We did consult with Mr. Ieng Sary. We did receive a waiver from him that his medical reports and his medical condition can be discussed in public here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel, for confirmation. The Chamber wishes to advise parties and members of the public as well that in the examination of the report by Professor John Campbell, the judges of the bench will put the question to the expert, and then we will hand over the floor to the defense team for Mr. Ieng Sary first to put some question to the expert in relation to the health status of the accused who is their own client. Then we will hand it over to the prosecution to put the questions to the expert. And the Chamber wishes to advise the lead co-lawyer for the civil parties that the lawyers for the civil parties should intervene in the examination of the report only when they disagree at any point with the prosecution, or you feel that there is some things to add to what the prosecution has asked in order to avoid repetition. And we will hand over the floor last to other defense team if they so wish to put the questions to the expert. Court officer is now instructed to bring the expert in the courtroom. Very good morning, Mr. Expert. Before we proceed to the examination of your report, the Chamber wishes to put a few preliminary questions to you in relation to your personal biography. Your name is Professor John Campbell, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor John Campbell. The Chamber wishes to inform you that in response to the question posed by either judges of the bench or parties, we have asked the AV assistant to monitor the sound system here. So I would like to ask you to observe the red light on your microphone before you speak so that your voice can get through the sound systems and it is rendered by the interpreters. Because we have 3 working languages here, Khmer, English, and French, so we have to have a pause in between so that the language is rendered. Professor, how old are you now?
I'm 66.
Thank you. What is your nationality?
I'm a New Zealander.
Thank you. Where are you currently residing?
In Dunedin, New Zealand.
Thank you. Professor John Campbell, you have provided expert testimony before this chamber so far. Has there been any changes in your qualification, whether it be professional or personal occupation, from your last examination of the accused in question in August 2012?
No, there's been no change.
Thank you. Just now, the chamber heard the report by the greffier of the chamber that you have already taken an oath. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Professor, since you are an expert in geriatrician, can you enlighten the court whether or not you have any expertise in relation to vascular or cardiac medicine?
Yes, I'm qualified as a specialist in internal medicine, and many of my patients have problems, cardiac and vascular problems.
Thank you. In late August 2012, the chamber appointed you and the other 2 experts, Dr. Hud Lina and Dr. Sina Fazel, to examine the health status of Mr. Ieng Sary when you were conducting the fitness to stand trial of Madame Ieng Theret. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Then your team submitted the preliminary report concerning the health status of Mr. Ieng Sary in August 2012. Did you prepare this report?
Yes, I was one of the 3 of us who prepared that report.
And on the 8th of October 2012, the chamber appointed you to examine the health status of Mr. Ieng Sary again. And then from the 4th to the 6th of November, you re-examined the health status of Mr. Ieng Sary in consultation with the treating doctors for Mr. Ieng Sary at Khmer Soviet Hospital. Did you re-examine him during this period?
Yes, I re-examined him during that period.
And on the 6th of November 2012, you submitted a report, examination report, on the health of Mr. Ieng Sary in response to the request by the Chamber. Did you prepare this report?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the court in brief the health status of Mr. Ieng Sary at the moment, and can you also, in light of that report, provide a recommendation to the court as to the care to be taken for Mr. Ieng Sary so that he is well enough to participate in the proceedings?
Yes, I shall enlarge on parts of my report. I'll do it in two parts. First is cognitive function, his mental state. His mental state is unchanged from what I and the other doctors saw and reported on in our September report. On testing his memory, there was no significant change. His physical state, though, is that he is more frail than he was before. He has spent the last 2 months in hospital. He has had very little physical activity during that time, and as a consequence, his weakness is greater. If I could deal individually with his physical problems. His first problem is his heart disease. Currently, that is stable on the treatment that he is receiving. He is not short of breath at rest when he is lying. He does become short of breath with activity, but that is primarily because with his additional muscular weakness, any physical activity demands more of him and leaves him more breathless. He is, however, quite able to converse normally when he is lying on his bed. The second problem is his neck pain and lower back pain. His lower back pain is unchanged. It is due primarily to wear and tear, to osteoarthritis involving the vertebral bodies, and that also causes him some neck pain as well. That is best treated with pain relief, which he is receiving, with a back brace and with a cervical collar. His other physical problem is the dizziness that he complains of. And as I've outlined in my report, I feel this comes from 3 causes. First is a condition called benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. And this is a disorder of the semicircular canals, which are one of the essential balance mechanisms of the body. And debris accumulates in those canals so that when the head moves, this debris gives a sensation of movement. And it classically occurs when the person, for example, rolls over in bed, bends down, or stands up. It gives a spinning sensation or vertigo, and that is what he describes. Now the diagnosis of this can be assisted by what's called the Dix-Hallpike maneuver, which we do by turning the person's head to 45 degrees and then lying them back with the head down 20 degrees of extension. And what we see when that occurs is some beats of nystagmus, which are rapid eye movements to one side. Now that was difficult to do with Ieng Sary because of his back pain and because he closed his eyes tightly because of that pain when I lay him back. However, when I did get him to open his eyes, there were some beats of nystagmus, which helps confirm that diagnosis. The second cause of his dizziness is, I suspect, that his blood pressure is low at times because of his heart disease and because of his medications. And that is something that will need to be watched if he is sitting for any length of time. His blood pressure did drop when he stood. The third cause of his dizziness is that he has now become weaker because of his inactivity, and as a consequence he feels unsteady when he is standing, and this gives him a sense of dizziness or poor balance. Now, it's important to note that when I examined him, I found no evidence of damage to the brainstem or the cerebellum. I know the question of vertebrovascular ischemia has been raised. The brain is supplied by 4 main arteries. 2 carotid arteries which go up the front of the neck, and the 2 vertebral arteries which come up the back. And they link up at the base of the brain in what's called the circle of Willis, a bit like a roundabout. So if there's obstruction to one of the arteries, the other artery blood flow can flow through to that area. Now, vertebrovascular ischemia affects particularly the hind part of the brain, not the thinking part, not the reasoning part, not the memory part, but 2 parts of the brain, the cerebellum, which has to do with balance, and the brain stem, which is where the fibres from the front part of the brain pass down to the spinal cord. And it also has the nuclei for the cranial nerves, the nerves that move the eyes, give sensation in the face, move the facial muscles, have to do with swallowing and with talking. Now, when I examined Ieng Sary, I found no evidence of any damage to the fibres passing from the front part of the brain down through the brainstem, and I found no evidence of damage to the cranial nerves. So on examining the nervous system, there is no evidence of damage to the hind part of the brain supplied by the vertebral arteries which join together to form the basilar artery. So the issue of impaired blood supply to the brain was raised earlier. I could find no evidence for that on examination. So in summary, we have a man now 87 who is frail, physically frail. He is weaker than he was before, and that's because he's had no physical activity for the last 2 months or so. And his dizziness, as is very common in people of his age who complain of dizziness, is due to a number of causes, not just one. So my recommendations from that are that he is more comfortable lying flat, and the holding cell is very appropriate for that. I examined him for an hour to an hour and a half and did some informal testing of memory at the end of that period, and he was still very alert, following, and there was no evidence of impairment of concentration. Currently he's in the hospital, but his medications have not been changed for a number of weeks. I do not feel that he is gaining anything by continuing in hospital. The doctors indicated that in part he was there in case there was an emergency. Main emergency would be if his heart were to stop and he was to need resuscitation, but I do not feel he would be a fit candidate for resuscitation anyway, and it would not be a reason for keeping him in hospital. He is requiring more physical care than previously, and obviously that would need to be provided at the detention centre. So my recommendations are that he return to the detention centre, that during the trial he use the holding cell where he can lie flat, that he use a soft collar, and he also complained that he was having more difficulty reading, not focusing so well, and I think a review of his glasses would be worthwhile.
Thank you, Professor. How about the treatment? According to you, how much care to be taken for him when he is following the proceeding before the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia?
The doctors looking after him have made some alterations to his heart medications. His heart failure at present is stable. I do not feel that further change would improve the situation. He is on a large number of medications. As I've said in my report, some of them can contribute to dizziness, and it would be worthwhile considering reducing those, although the dizziness preceded their use. With his medications, one of the side effects is that they do lower blood pressure, and that's why monitoring of his blood pressure when he's sitting for a length of time is necessary.
The President, thank you very much, Professor. I would now like to turn to fellow judges on the bench. If you have any question to put to the expert, I now hand over to Judge Silver Cartwright.
Thank you, President, and good morning, Professor Campbell. Welcome back to Phnom Penh. Professor Campbell, in fact, you have examined Ieng Sary now on a number of occasions, and you have also had the benefit of examinations, of earlier examinations, notably by urologists, conducted in 2008. They were Dr. Kuch Hach and Professor Philippe Mangan. I'll get my pronunciation corrected very soon. So you recall that particular report?
Yes, I do. And there has been no change in his urological symptoms.
Thank you. So they are, in short, well controlled at the present time. Is that correct?
So he needs to pass urine frequently, but in the holding cell he can manage that with a bottle for assistance.
And then in November of 2009, a Professor Brinded, who is a professor, associate professor of forensic psychiatry, also submitted a report, and you have had an opportunity to read that report as well.
Just so, yes.
Then there was the first of your reports prepared in June of 2011, in which you examined Mr. Ieng Sary and some of the other accused and provided separate reports for each of them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, let me go back briefly to your qualifications and experience. It seems there might be some misunderstanding on the part of the or at least one of the parties, that other experts might be required to examine Ieng Sary. Is it correct to say that in your field of geriatrics, you provide the first level of expert examination of an older person? I think you once said someone over 65 years of age, and that your specialist field of geriatrics, in that field, you must be able to examine a number of complex and often interrelated physical and mental difficulties that these older patients are having. Now, I know I use lay terminology, but is that an acceptable way to describe your expertise in lay terms?
Yes, that is so, and I might comment on that report that you've alluded to. When I saw Ieng Sary on this occasion, I determined whether there'd been any change in his cognitive function, because a full assessment had been done by a forensic psychiatrist, Sina Fazell, on the last visit. I could find no change in his mental state.
Well, again, going back to your qualifications to be able to recommend to the trial chamber if other expertise is needed, is this a part of your usual specialist duties in the course of your clinical work?
Yes, that is so. We see patients with multiple medical and mental problems, and will refer, if necessary, for additional opinion. But I do not feel additional referral is needed in this situation.
So, of the various specialist reports, we have covered Ieng Sary's urological status, his heart disease status, and, of course, his more general physical health, as well as his mental status, down to the report of the 3rd of September, which was the last time you examined Mr. Ieng Sary. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I feel he has been comprehensively assessed, and he was very well assessed by Sina Fazell and Lena Hewitt on the last occasion. And as I said, I don't feel there's been any change in his mental state since then.
Now, it has also been suggested by one of the parties, and I just want to make sure that you feel you've had ample opportunity to examine Ieng Sary, and both in the past and the present, the current examination. It's been suggested that you took a very short time in your examination. Can I just ask you to comment, please, if you were faced with a patient such as Ieng Sary in the normal course of your clinical duties, is the time you have spent with him too little? Have you been given inadequate time to examine and to prepare a report?
No, I've been given adequate time. I was able to see him over 2 days and had 2 sessions with him on the first day. Normally when I'm assessing a patient at outpatients, I have an hour appointment, and I've had more than that. And I know a lot of Ieng Sary's background, medical background anyway, so did not need any additional time.
Have you had clinical experience of patients such as Ieng Sary in the course of your clinical duties over the years, presenting with a number of physical and prospectively mental health symptoms?
Yes, it is in the nature of our work seeing older people that they have multiple problems, and they span the spectrum of multiple physical problems, often mental cognitive problems, and also social problems. So it is one of the areas of expertise for those in geriatric medicine that they assess multiple problems.
And as you have already indicated, in consultation with Associate Professor Lena Huot and Dr. Fazel, both of whom are experts in the field of psychiatry, you examined Mr. Ieng Sary and reported on the 3rd of September. Now, would it be fair to say that a psychiatrist might approach a patient of this type slightly differently from the way that you approach him, insofar as the actual testing is concerned, or do you both follow the same approach?
In terms of testing cognitive function, that is memory and judgment, we would approach it in the same way. A psychiatrist would dig deeper into the areas of depression, for example, and any other psychosis, but there has not been any evidence for that with Ieng Sary. And given that we do, in geriatric medicine, see a lot of patients with underlying mental illness, we are attuned to it.
Would you, as a geriatrician, look also for physiological factors that might lead to mental illness, involving, for example, and again I'm speaking as a layperson, examining a brain scan or material of that nature?
Yes, we do, and we regularly order CT scans of head, neck, and are used to reviewing those with radiologists.
And throughout the many and varied examinations Mr. Ieng Sary has had, has any specialist or treating doctor expressed a concern about his mental status?
No, the reports have consistently been that he is not cognitively impaired, that he is able to follow reasoning and understand the processes, and certainly I've not found any evidence that he does not have that ability.
Returning to the jointly prepared report of the 3rd of September, with which you and Lena Huot and Sina Fazel prepared, in that report, you jointly came to this conclusion concerning Ieng Sary's mental health status, and that is in document E222/1 at English ERN 00846194, paragraph 41. You said this: "It is our opinion that Ieng Sary does not suffer from any mental illness or cognitive impairment beyond what would be expected for someone of his age and background, and therefore we have no recommendations to make in relation to mental state or cognitive function." Now that, Professor Campbell, I assume was your starting point for the most recent examination during this week when it came to mental health status. And you have already indicated to the court that you saw no change between the 3rd of September and this week when you re-examined him. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's on both general discussion about his symptoms and problems, and also more formal testing of his memory, both formal and informal testing of his memory. I found no change, and there was no history of change either.
Can you just elaborate on what the formal and informal testing was that you conducted in the current examination, please?
I think informal arises in two ways. Firstly, when you're taking a history from a person, you can get a feel as to how well they're recalling events, how well they describe them, and I found no problems with Ieng Sary in doing that. Secondly, at the end of my first session with him, which was after an hour or so, I began to converse with him about his family, his grandchildren, where they were, what they were doing, to get a feeling as to whether he had any difficulty with recall there, and there was no evidence of that. Often informal testing in that way is useful because the person does not know they're actually having their memory assessed. And then thirdly, I repeated the mini mental state examination and found really no significant change in that from the scores previously. He scores above the level where one would consider cognitive impairment.
Now, Professor Campbell, the trial chamber permitted the parties to discuss your report with other consultants, and that has been done by Ieng Sary's defence team and by the prosecutors. Of course, the court did not authorise the introduction of any other material purporting to be based on expert qualifications and examination of the patient, and nor would the latter have been possible in the time available. But it's clear from the material that has emerged from Ieng Sary's consultation that the person who apparently is a forensic psychiatrist has not seen the report of the 3rd of September prepared by you and the other two psychiatrists whom I've already mentioned. Is that the situation?
It would appear so from the report, and therefore his comments are based on inadequate information, and therefore I feel of little or no value.
I'll come back to a couple of matters arising from that letter that we have received. But I want to look at Ieng Sary's ability to concentrate. Now, it's been suggested that he cannot concentrate for long periods of time, and that, of course, has an impact on his ability to participate fully in the trial, to consult with his lawyers, to listen to the evidence, and so on. In your view, if he suffers from a lower degree of concentration than, say, 10 years ago, is that related to his physical condition or to some aspect of his mental health status?
I found in my sessions with Ieng Sary, which have lasted more than an hour, for example, the first session the other day was an hour to an hour and a half, there was no flagging in his ability to concentrate. I feel if he is physically comfortable, for example, in the holding cell, he will be able to maintain concentration. I've found no evidence of lack of concentration. And the court sessions, from my understanding, are usually only an hour and a half, and then there's a break, and I feel that is well within his capacity.
Do I infer from this that you consider it more appropriate for Ieng Sary to remain in the holding cells than to come into the courtroom unless he elects to do that on any occasion?
Yes, I think that is the best arrangement. He is more uncomfortable sitting than he was, and when he's lying flat he is comfortable. And the holding cell is well set up, and I feel it is most appropriate for him.
There has been a suggestion that a better bed be provided to him, and I think the suggestion is one that's similar to a hospital bed, which has the ability to raise and lower the head piece. Is that something that you think is essential, or do you feel that his current bed is adequate for the purposes of participating through the audiovisual methods?
I think if he had a bed that could be elevated at the head, that would make it easier for him to look at the monitor. And he was comfortable lying flat when I saw him, but it may make it easier for him. I also made a recommendation last time on the mattress on the bed as well, which he'd found a bit difficult.
Now, returning to more general topics, you are well aware that Ieng Sary has been hospitalised in the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital for about 7 weeks now, and that the treating doctors came to court to give us their assessment of his condition. Amongst other things that they mentioned, they said they were exploring other treatment options. Now, have you seen any different treatment being administered at the Khmer Soviet Hospital as the result of their examinations of him during this almost 2-month period?
No, there has been no change. I mean, the issue of surgery was raised, but there is no lesion that would be amenable to surgery. And even if there were, his general state is such that it would not be appropriate.
And overall, you've made it very clear that for his general physical benefit, it would be preferable if he were discharged from hospital and resume some modest amount of exercise to the degree that he can tolerate. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, I feel the prolonged period with lack of physical activity has added to his weakness. He has had massage there, which may have made things more comfortable for him, but no actual physical activity to try and maintain muscle strength. And I'm not sure how willing he will be to participate in a program, but it should at least be offered. I think one looks at function and disability. Function can gradually deteriorate without it affecting ability. Ability is at a certain threshold. So to stand from a seat, we need a certain amount of muscle strength, which is fixed depending on our weight. And people in their 80s are often using 100% of their strength to rise slowly. And a few weeks in bed is often sufficient to drop that person below the threshold. And that's what we've seen with Ieng Sary. So he has not lost a lot more strength, but he's lost sufficient additional strength to impact on his ability to do basic tasks.
You did suggest consideration be given to a reduction in some of Ieng Sary's medication. And from what I understand you have said today, this is medication that has been given to him since he was hospitalised, or am I confusing two different sorts of medication?
Yes, certainly one of his medications used for back spasm has been given recently. I'm not sure how effective that's been, and I would have suggested a cautious reduction to see if it improved the situation. I think that is unlikely, though, that it will improve the situation.
Now, in the same letter that was sought from a consultant by the Ieng Sary team, the consultant who, as I said before, is presumably a forensic psychiatrist, he mentions that a blanket dismissal of potential medication side effects based on the assumption that since the defendant's medications have not been changed, a gradual emergence of subtle yet significant medication-related neurotoxicity can simply be pulled out or would be noticed by his treating clinicians, and that is in the context of your failure to consider this particular matter. Can you comment on that comment?
Yes, it's a somewhat strange comment. He is on the tablet.
Just one moment. I think that I was speaking too fast, was I? I'm very sorry.
Oui, et je crois que le traducteur serait heureux.
I believe that if we had the document reference, it would also help with the French interpretation. Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is not a document that has been admitted. It is a letter received yesterday, and I will quote again from it the passage that I want Professor Campbell to comment on, and I will do it really slowly, and I do apologize. In the context of a critique of your findings and recommendations, Professor Campbell, this gentleman refers to a blanket dismissal of potential medication side effects based on the ipse dixit assumption that since the defendant's medications have not been changed, a gradual emergence of subtle yet significant medication-related neurotoxicity can simply be pulled out or would be noticed by his treating clinicians. That's the end of the quote. First of all, could you just tell us what that means?
I'm struggling myself a little to understand what that means exactly. Ieng Sary is on one medication, for example, bromazepam, which may have an effect on drowsiness, cognitive function, but he's been on that for a long time. There is no evidence that it is actually causing side effects. So I do not feel any of his medications are affecting his cognitive function.
Thank you. Now, you also mentioned in your report some other tests that might be attempted, and that's at paragraph 17 of your most recent report, where you suggest that he have some additional tests, quantitative immunoglobulins, light chain quantitation. Now that I know the interpreters are not going to get this down, they'll have to go back to the report. And these would be intended to exclude multiple myeloma and myopathy. And those are tests that you have suggested. However, you go on to say this: these tests may evidently be difficult to obtain in Cambodia. Am I to assume that you covered the possibility of those tests being conducted with the treating doctors at the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital?
Yes, I did. The multiple myeloma, I'd asked previously for a test called a serum protein electrophoresis, and that was normal. It didn't show any evidence of multiple myeloma. The additional tests are to exclude a very remote possibility. Sometimes with myeloma don't get a change in the electrophoretic pattern. I think that is very unlikely. So if there is difficulty, I don't think a lot will be gained by chasing it further. The other test is a test of specific damage to muscle. He is on a tablet called atorvastatin, which can cause this problem, but he has been on it for many years, and I think it's very unlikely that this is causing problems. As I said before, I feel most of his weakness is due to his inactivity.
In your report, you suggest that he will require more personal care in the detention centre than he was receiving down to the time he was admitted to hospital nearly 2 months ago. Could you expand on the type of physical care, quite specifically, please, that might be required? I have inferred from that medical care the same as usual, but there are some other additional assistance that might be useful.
Now, with his greater weakness, he is requiring more assistance to stand, for example. He is not able to walk in the same way as he was previously. So he will require assistance with dressing and with showering and with personal care.
Given your experience with a number of accused and your familiarity with the detention centre facilities and with the holding cell facilities as well, of course, of the courtroom, would he be provided with enough such practical care with the assistance of his guards, or do you envisage something more specialised than that?
I don't think he needs more specialised care. Ieng Sary, for example, was receiving quite a lot of personal care previously, and that was provided within the detention centre. The detention centre would need to review its staffing to ensure that it had adequate staffing to help him stand safely and to move safely.
Now, physical therapy is another issue, perhaps to improve his physical condition. You have already noted that his physical condition has deteriorated and that he may or may not be enthusiastic about embarking on a very moderate exercise program. You mentioned massage, which you said would have made him more comfortable. By physical therapies, is this a suggestion about a physiotherapist, for example?
Yes, I think that would need to be discussed with him to determine whether he was willing or not. And if he were willing, then a program to try and build leg strength might be of value. But it would need to be under the guidance of someone with expertise, such as a physiotherapist.
Again, you've had a lot of experience of the facilities, medical and other, that are available for people in the situation of the accused. Is such physical therapy program available for Ieng Sary? If so, is it appropriately offered in the detention centre, or does this require some form of hospital-based treatment or therapy?
No, it could be offered in the detention centre because it requires Ieng Sary to carry that out. The program needs to be established by a physiotherapist, but then could be done under the guidance of the guards, for example. It would need, for example, some ankle cuff weights to try and build strength in the lower limbs.
From an earlier examination of the fitness of another accused, Ieng Sary, we are aware that trained physiotherapists here in Cambodia if there are any at all, there are very few indeed. Is that still the situation?
I'm not sure if that's the situation. That would need to be explored. It does not have to be a sophisticated program. It just needs someone to start it and then to increase the, for example, weights as he improves. But as I said before, it would need to have his willingness to participate before being tried.
When we heard from the treating doctors following Ieng Sary's admission to hospital, they referred to other inquiries that they might make, and they had consulted with various specialists within their hospital system. Are any of those additional referrals required in your view?
No, I don't feel they are. I feel in someone of Ieng Sary's age and frailty, one has to be very careful about what tests, investigations he is subjected to. And there would have to be good evidence that there would be benefit from the testing before embarking on that. And that's why I feel no additional tests at this stage are required. As I mentioned, he could have angiography involving looking at the blood vessels at the base of the brain, but that would not add to his management.
So let me attempt to summarise my understanding to see if I have it right. You disagree with the diagnosis by his treating doctors that he has vertebrobasilar disease, and therefore there is no need to consider surgery or any other treatment related to modifying that condition. Is that correct?
That is correct. As I've indicated, vertebrobasilar ischemia was a diagnosis that used to be used very commonly, and a lot of symptoms could be attributed to it. But in Ieng Sary's case, there are alternative explanations for the dizziness, and I found no evidence of vertebrobasilar ischemia.
And again, to summarise the other aspects of his physical condition, you find no significant changes in his urological status or his heart status.
That is correct. I mean, his cardiac status is stable, but it is very precarious. He has significant heart disease, and life at the age of 87 is pretty unpredictable, and especially with significant underlying heart disease.
And as we've already covered, but just to summarise, you feel he has been, in your opinion rather, you consider he has been adequately tested and thoroughly tested for his mental health status, and that there is no issue arising from that status that might give rise to concern about his ability to participate in his trial.
That is correct. I've assessed him on a number of occasions, and he was very fully assessed by Sina Fazell and Lena Hewitt 2 months ago. There's been no change since then that I could demonstrate, and therefore I feel that has been fully assessed. I do not feel there'll be any advantage, for example, in bringing Sina Fazell back to repeat the examinations.
And his orthopaedic condition is gradually deteriorating, causing more back pain and neck pain, for which you have made some recommendations. Is that the situation?
That is correct. I mean, he has back brace, and I've suggested he use the neck brace primarily to stop sudden head movements and that vertigo, especially during the day.
So, in a sense, you have covered every aspect of his physical and mental health, and you've acted as a sort of clearinghouse, and you recommend no other specialist examination or intervention.
I do not feel that there are any further investigations that would lead to treatment that would improve his overall situation. I feel he is stable at present, although the condition will be an inevitable deterioration.
And finally, the symptom that had him admitted to hospital in the first place, his dizziness, you have found 3 possible causes of that and have made the recommendations that we've already traversed to assist him in coping with those symptoms. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, President. I have no other questions.
The President, thank you very much, Judge Cartwright. Since it is now appropriate moment for the adjournment, the Chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes. Court officer is now instructed to assist Professor Campbell during the recess and have him return to the courtroom by 10 to 11.